Hi, this is Trevor Muir, and you are listening to the Epic Classroom Podcast, episode 54. So happy to have you listening this week. Today, we're going to be talking about the power of creating community in your school and why it's not just an add-on to the student learning experience. I'm also going to tell you about one of my favorite traditions ever in my teaching career and why it helped me love my job more and my students to love school more. So let's dive into it. All right, welcome back to the podcast. I got to tell you, before we dive into this week's topic, which kind of connects to this first little story, I just have to tell you about this journey I just did to Quebec City in Canada. So my wife and I are celebrating our 15th year of marriage right now, and we thought it would be really fun several times this year to tag on a trip together to a couple of my different speaking engagements. And so in May, we got to go to New York City, where I was speaking up in White Plains. And so we went and had this amazing time at the conference. And then we went and spent some time in New York City, which was unbelievable. And then in October, we flew into Phoenix together, where I was speaking at a school. And then we went to Sedona and just had the most amazing time in the desert. And then this last weekend for her birthday, and because, why not? We're going to be going somewhere. Come along with me. We went to Quebec City. And I used to say Quebec City, but I've been corrected since then. And as we were flying off to Quebec, actually we were flying to Montreal first, we had a layover in LaGuardia. And our plane leaving Grand Rapids, Michigan, was delayed by an hour because of mechanical issues. And so our plane was an hour late taking off, and we were really nervous about making our connection. But our flight attendant assured us, hey, you're going to make it because the gate that you land at is literally next to your departing gate. And our captain has let them know that you're on the way, and so they'll probably hold the plane for you. And I was like, wonderful. Thanks, Delta. This is why you're the best. And we pulled up to our gate, and there was our plane next to us, and we were feeling great until it backed out of the spot, and they left without us. And so we had to spend the next 8 hours in the New York airport in LaGuardia just feeling miserable for ourselves because not only were we flying to Montreal, then we had to rent a car and drive 3 hours to Quebec City. And so we were like, what are we going to do? And so we were able to get a later flight, but that meant we would get into Quebec City at about 10, or into Montreal at 10:30 at night, and then a 3-hour drive and get to our hotel at 2 a.m. And then the next morning I had to be up at 7 to go do a little keynote. So I was like, oh, this is so stressful. And I wanted to get all worked up about it. And it was my wife's birthday. And so we were sitting at dinner, feeling a little miserable, and this really kind waitress just was nothing but joy. We told her about our trouble, which, good Lord, quit whining, baby Trevor. This person probably hears about people's travel struggles every single day of the week. And now she heard about ours, and I was feeling a little silly telling her about it. And then she came back at the end of our meal, and she had this beautiful tiramisu cake with a candle in it. And this isn't even something that's offered. She just brought it out and gave it to my wife, and she said, I want you to have a wonderful birthday. And she gave her this cake, and my wife starts tearing up, and it was just the most beautiful little reminder that there is still some real good in the world. It was such a beautiful little moment. And I know it seems small, but it was what we needed. And it was just this kindness that made me feel like we belonged. And I don't belong to what? I'm not sure. Maybe just the human race. But man, did it make us feel belonging and connection. And it was joy and goodness. And then we went to Quebec and we had the most incredible time. And I had the most unbelievable experiences with the teachers and educators there at the Speak conference, and we just loved it. And it was a big Christmas festival in the city, and it was magical. And we went ice skating, and it was all so good. And then when it was over, we drove back to Montreal, where we were spending the night before flying back. And as we're walking around Montreal, we get a phone call from the hotel in Quebec, 3.5 hours away, saying that we forgot our passports. We forgot our passports in the hotel safe. And they said, feel free to come back and grab them. It's like, well, we just drove over 3 hours to get here. And now we would have to drive back 3 more hours at 7 at night. And then drive back again 3 more hours. And then go to bed late at night. And then fly out the next morning. And you better believe I was feeling all the feelings again. I was like, this trip is cursed. And it's somehow I feel like it's all my fault. And I was just feeling so upset. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to just try something. And so I called the conference organizer back in Quebec City. And they were like, hi, Trevor, is everything okay? I said, well, not exactly. And I told them what happened. And these unbelievable people, Isabel, if you're listening, Isabel, the conference organizer, went and found an educator at the conference who was planning to drive back to Montreal, and she brought our passports back with her, and then went and found us in Montreal, would not allow us to drive to her. She came and found us and drove way out of the way and brought us our passports, and we got home. And I am just telling you these two stories because I feel like sometimes we need reminders that there is just still human kindness and neighborliness and joy out there. And man, does it feel good, especially when things aren't feeling good, especially when the flight gets delayed and you get stranded, especially when you just don't have a lot of options. When these little shiny little moments, it just makes you feel like you belong to something. You know what I mean? Like I had this unbelievable experience at this conference, getting to connect with so many people. And I felt this belonging there, like, wow, here's people from a different culture. Most of them speak French, and English is a second language. So I'm feeling like an outsider when I get there. And then I leave that conference feeling like I belong in some way. And then it's reinforced by this act of kindness. And I just think there is this power in belonging and connection. And that does connect what I want to talk about as far as teaching in school goes today. The very first school I worked at is Kent Innovation High School. And we had this tradition every single year to throw a feast for all of our students during Thanksgiving. And the reason we did this is because we wanted our students to feel loved in a way that's not just in the classroom. We wanted them to feel connected to the school. I remember one time I was teaching the week before Thanksgiving, or that week leading up to the holiday, and I remember just talking about what's everybody going to do over Thanksgiving, and I was just going on and on about how I love to stuff myself with as much turkey and food and dessert as humanly possible, and then take a nap, and then wake up and stuff myself again. And I was going on and on about just gorging over Thanksgiving. And I remember I just was looking out, and there were some kids who were really into that, and they were like, yo, yeah, totally. But then there were other students who weren't even acknowledging what I was talking about. They were just kind of sitting there with blank stares. And I was like, oh, that's weird. So I called on one of them. I was like, oh, so-and-so, do you love gorging over Thanksgiving? And he kind of just looks at me. He goes, nah, we don't do Thanksgiving. I was like, why? It's like, it's not even a religious holiday. Like, why wouldn't you do Thanksgiving? And he's just like, we don't. And another kid's like, yeah, we don't do it either. And I remember talking to another teacher about this. I was like, why would these students not do Thanksgiving? I guess I'm feeling a little confused. And somebody who's been teaching much longer than me said, oh, a lot of kids don't come from families where they can afford a Thanksgiving feast. That's a luxury, man. And I was like, oh, Captain Ignorant shows up again, right? Like, it's the same feeling of when I ask students, like, what are you going to do over Christmas holiday break? What do you want for Christmas? And I got the same type of response, like, I just sit at home. Like, we don't do anything. We don't go skiing. I don't get a nice gift. I mean, I remember one year, we can talk about this during Christmas season, holiday season, but like, there's this ignorance that I just, that I didn't intentionally have, but it's like, oh, not everybody has a giant feast and gorges themselves. That's a luxury for a lot of us. And so we started this tradition at our school that we as a staff, we're going to potluck a giant Thanksgiving meal. And we're going to throw it out to parents without the expectation that any student has to bring in anything. But we're going to throw it out, and if anybody wants to volunteer and help make it happen, we would love the help. But as a staff, we all stacked hands and decided we are going to help create a Thanksgiving feast for every kid in our school. Now, this podcast is not about you figuring out how do we throw a Thanksgiving feast in our school. Listen, you might not have the capacity for that. You might not be able to do that. That might not be something you're interested in, and that is absolutely fine. But at our school, we decided this is something we really want to do. And so, as a staff, we all figured out, what are we all going to bring? And me and two other teachers, we came to our principal and we said, hey, we have an idea. We want to roast a whole hog for Thanksgiving. So we know somebody that has a huge, big smoker, And we were wondering if we could find a way to buy a whole hog, would we be able to roast it for Thanksgiving? And she said, yeah, but don't you have to like smoke those all night long? And we're like, well, that's the other piece. We were wondering if maybe we could stay at the school overnight and roast a hog all night long. And she's like, you want to stay at school and roast a hog? And we were like, yes, can we do that? And she's like, I don't really see why not. And so she gave us the keys to the school, and we spent the night there playing ping pong and Nintendo 64, because one of us had that. And we literally just took turns sleeping and waking up to check on the pig, and we roasted a whole pig for Thanksgiving. And then that day, all the students were there, and we had a table stretching from one side of the school to the other, literally one single table stretching all the way through, and every single teacher brought something, a crock pot, a meal, and then a bunch of parents and caregivers got on board, and they brought different things. And then the entire school at about 11 a.m. sat down at a single table, and we ate together. We feasted. And I'm telling you, friends, I'm getting teared up just telling you about it. It was one of the most beautiful things we ever did in our school, and we did it every single Thanksgiving. It was a tradition. It was about connection. It was about letting kids know that we care about you, that we want you to experience this joy with this community that you are a part of. Yes, it was about food, but it also wasn't about food. It was about the community. It was about the act of doing something other than just teaching and learning together. But we're going to feast together. We're going to celebrate together. We're going to laugh together. It was about community, right? Like, and I wanted to tell you about it because I think that should be a challenge every school has, is how can we reinforce and build community together? How can we prioritize it? Not just making an add-on, right? Like if you only came to our school one time ever, and it was that day, it was the day before Thanksgiving break, and you came to our school and you saw what school looked like that day, where we had shortened schedules and then like a whole 2-hour period of kids eating together and feasting and laughing and playing ping pong, because we had a table that we put a board across and made it into a ping pong table, and all these different things. If you only came during that, you might think, wow, it's kind of a frivolous little school. Or like they seem to like have fun, but when does the learning happen, right? Like don't they have testing in the spring that they need to prepare for, right? Or like, hey, they're about to get a whole break off for Thanksgiving. Is that really the best use of their time eating together? And I'm like, oh yeah, it was. Because here's the thing: students who feel connected to their school, students who feel like they belong somewhere, as a result, they also feel connected to the learning experience there. There's no delineation. There's no disconnect, right? This was school, right? We weren't taking a break from school to have a feast. No, the feast was school. By students feeling loved and cared for, and they felt this belonging. When we got back from Thanksgiving break, and there were students who weren't paying attention, I say, hey guys, can we focus right now? I'm telling you, every single time you get, yeah, you bet, Mr. Muir. It's like, yeah, why are they listening to me? Well, it's because they feel connected to me in a way that was deeper than they did beforehand. They feel this connection. Humans desire connection. We need it, right? We are a communal species. You know, I looked it up. The definition of community, if you really want to put it to words, it's a unified body of individuals. I'll say it again. The definition of community is a unified body of individuals. Unified, connected. We all sat at the same table for a reason. We all wanted to be connected in that way. Us teachers spent lots of time preparing these meals, time that we weren't paid for, which it'd be cool if you were paid for it. But the truth is, we were like, you know what? This is worthwhile. We are going to put in the time to creating this food and organizing this event and spending the night at school to roast a whole hog, because it connects us with our students, and it connects our students with us, and it connects all of us to the school we are a part of. We are now unified because of this experience. And so that's what we did for Thanksgiving week. And I got to tell you, I loved it so much. It made me love that job more. All right, we want to talk about how can we love our work more. Find a way to get more unified to the work, you know, to the people there, to the students there, So it made me love my work more, but again, it also made my students love being there more. There was no disconnect. And I want to just say that, and I've said it probably more times than you need to hear on this podcast, but I'll say it again. Sometimes from the outside looking in, the epic stuff happening, the community building, the icebreakers, the silliness, the music, the noise, the jokes, the sharing good things at the start of class, the stuff that isn't academic in nature, the stuff that isn't on the Common Core, the stuff that's not being assessed by the SAT and ACT, the stuff that's not on the college admissions exams, the stuff that doesn't go into the teacher evaluation. That stuff is every bit as essential to what's going on in the school building. Because I'm telling you, and I've seen it over and over in my life, I've seen it over and over with teachers all over the world, including in Quebec City, Canada. I've seen it. Students who feel connected to school feel connected to their learning. And so, as you think about Thanksgiving or the other holidays coming up, or you just think about how you like to start class, how can you create more community with your students? How can you help unify them more? How can you help bring them together and show them that you care about them and give them opportunities for them to show each other they care about each other? How can you build this space where people enjoy being, who feel connected to it, so therefore really good learning can occur? So that's all I got. So if you are listening to this before Thanksgiving, if you live here in the United States, if you're listening before it, happy Thanksgiving. I am so grateful for you. If you are listening to this outside of where you celebrate our Thanksgiving, I'm also grateful for you. What a joy it is to get to connect with you. That was a big reminder for me this last week, is it doesn't matter where you are. There are an incredible amount of educators out there who give so freely of themselves and of their professionalism and their skills and knowledge and expertise to their students, and that shows in what kind of people they are. So thank you to that teacher who brought me my passports, Jacqueline. Thank you to Isabel for helping make that happen. Thank you to the kind waitress at LaGuardia Airport for building a little bit of community on my wife's birthday. And thank you to everybody listening to this podcast. What a grateful person I am to get to connect with you. So anyway, this is the Epic Classroom Podcast, and my name is Trevor Muir, and I'm excited to connect with you next time.